Good morning. At least it's morning now. Um, just thought I would do a quick card pull. Quick meaning 15 minutes. I really do try to be brief, but honestly, one of the main things that I want to do with my videos is just display authenticity. You know, too often I feel like you have people that read tarot that are just, it's just an advertisement. That's all it is, about drumming up business. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's not something that, I mean, I would love to have my own business doing this for people, but at the same time, I don't want to dangle a carrot or not be myself, you know. And this is who I am. My videos are certainly not professional in any way, shape, or form. I don't like to watch myself on video. I never have. I find that to be really tedious. So I don't really edit these at all. Sometimes I'll pause, but that's usually only to try to get my brain together, because otherwise these would be really long videos. And I kind of want to give people a taste of what it is like to be read for. I'm not just looking at the cards and not thinking about them. I'm actually thinking about them and how they relate to the other cards around them, how they relate to questions in my head or what's coming up for me. That's more the deal. So yeah, long videos. Whoopsie. We're at 2 minutes already. Now it's just shuffling and me talking. Good Lord. Okay, that's too many. I don't read reversals, by the way. I don't think that that's necessary. So, but when they come out like this, I'll keep them in the order. So the first one out is the King of Wands. Then the Moon, the World, Page of Pentacles, the Star, Death, Six of Wands, see, I'm thinking, I'm gonna pause. So a lot of times form matters to me as far as the number of cards that come out, what is the balance in what it looks like, plus what cards are around, you know, specifically making up, like the center card is the Page of Pentacles. And you can see a little guy, just this little guy right up here. He's pushing that little round, almost marble-like looking object. And it just made me think of Sisyphus. I think about Sisyphus a lot. One of my favorite books in college was The Myth of Sisyphus. What's his name? Sisyphus? The Myth of Sisyphus by Albert Camus. And I think about it a lot. He talks about why we persist despite struggle. And, you know, Sisyphus is damned to roll a boulder up a mountain and then just watch it go back, you know, fall back down, and then he has to start the whole process over again. And life can definitely feel that way. in a lot of ways. I feel that way when I'm being asked, or feel like I'm being asked, or putting myself in the situation of needing to hold everything together for myself, for the people around me. It's incredibly stressful. And part of that, you know, putting a lot of the onus on myself is about feeling that it's then within my control to fix, right? And it wouldn't surprise me if this reading does central, you know, does, I can't even speak right now. It does probably center a little bit around that. King of Wands, the moon, and the world. You know, the King of Wands, he's the master of creation. He's bold. I'm not always sure how to be that way myself. I'm introverted, and it takes a lot of pull to put me in that kind of energy. But so the King of Wands, we'll just kind of talk about the cards. Sometimes for me, I have to do that and that's another reason why the videos run long, is because I'm actually working this out real time. Because it's not as easy, for me anyway, it's not as easy as, okay, well, this card means that card. They're all interwoven in different ways every time you lay them out. And so with the King of Wands, you're talking about creation, you're talking about passion, you're talking about somebody who's skilled at these things. He's able to turn out a project. He can meet deadlines. He's in the flow. The moon talks about mystery. Sometimes it talks about illusion, because in the dark, with just a little of illumination from the moon and the stars, you're not always seeing things as starkly as you can in the daytime. But the moon is also talks about not just illusion, but also rebirth. Because when you go into the darkness and you look for the illumination, you start to see things differently. Maybe it's not about illusion. Maybe it's about seeing things differently. Because as much as we like to think that we know everything and that everything is within our control in some way, that's an illusion. What we view as being reality is also its own sense of illusion, because nobody is viewing reality in the same way. That's just not possible. We have too many things that shape how we view things. And I just was thinking about Ludwig Wittgenstein after saying that. He explores language and how we learn language and what that means, you know. And he was the one that he really struck me, because he talked about rotating on your axis to find a different perspective and to understand that there are many perspectives. And that has always stuck with me through my life. And in conflict, I always try to rotate on my axis so that I can try to see the other person, but the other person's side. But that can be really painful, because I don't ever want to do harm to people. So when you see that there's that possibility that you unconsciously harmed someone, and that's a hard thing to face, I think, for most of us. And instead of owning your part in things, it's much easier to deflect it, to put it on someone else, because we don't want to see that we can harm and not mean to do it. So the moon offers us a different perspective and a chance, I think, too, when you're able to see in the darkness and you're able to be in the darkness, it adds a new positive layer and a chance to possibly come up with a different way of being. So with cards, when I'm reading them, it usually does like a past, present to like future-ish type of progression. It just depends on what my intuition is telling me. So the next card after the moon is the World. And the World talks about the successful completion of a cycle. The World is, it's the final card in the major arcana. And it shows the end of a journey. That's not to say like the end, but at the end of that particular journey that you're on, whatever it is that you're cycling through. And again, you've got the middle card of the Page of Pentacles, which, like I said, reminds me of the myth of Sisyphus. But it's about bringing something that was in the darkness into the light, into the physical. Pentacles are earth. They're things that you can touch, things that you can see. And with what follows it, like I said, I feel like this is it is the central card. So I'm looking at this as the central issue. The past, the present, the future, or in process, really. With the Star, Death, Six of Wands. The Star is such a beautiful card. It talks about hope. It talks about wishes. It talks about healing. You know, after you're in the moon phase, after you're underneath the depths, integrating the opposites, working towards a term that Carl Jung used as individuation, you know, beyond the opposites, going further than good or bad, and understanding that it's not this or that. It's everything. Healing, transformation / rebirth, recognition. I mean, I constantly have concerns about my own healing, because a lot of it is toggling back and forth, and between old Nicole and new Nicole. But we see that it's not as simple as that. And it's not as simple as this is how I was before versus this is how I am now. it is about integrating those things. And I know that I get frustrated with myself because I expect perfection. Perfection is not a real thing. No one will ever be perfect. No one will ever be perfect. But it is about being the best that you can be. And I often will beat myself up if I'm not doing things the way that I feel I should be. But when I toggle back and forth between what I view as the old me versus the new me, I get really frustrated. And that really only blocks growth. You know, when you start to think about what you're not doing right, or how you messed this up or that up, it's a process. And when I feel those edges of where I was versus where I want to be or where I am, I just go right back into that mode of, you're not doing this well enough. Well, I'm making this up as I go along. This is not a path that someone has put forth for me. This is a path that I am putting forth for myself. I often forget that. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not always going to do the perfect thing or the quote unquote right thing. But it is about acknowledging in the moment, seeing in the moment, I don't want to be that person. So don't be that person. You move from that edge and you make a new edge. I think the part that I don't like is having to pick up the pieces and apologize if I've done anything to hurt someone unintentionally or anything like that. It bothers me. I don't want to ever harm. That's not been something that I set out to do, but I am honest, and I'm going to be honest about things around me, which creates friction. If I see something, I will say something. And I have to know what wound it's coming out of if that's the case, what intention I have. Intention means a lot. So with this spread, when I'm looking at things like this and doing readings for myself to check my healing, check what's going on in my life, how I'm processing things, the cards are helpful to flesh out some of these things, like seeing that push and pull within myself, understanding that it's part of the process of healing. I will always have to deal with the wounds that I incurred, you know. However, the more I know them and understand them, the more I'm able to see them and how they operate within my interactions with others. So with the last three, the Star, Death, Six of Wands, you're talking about healing and hope and keeping the hope. Understanding that, I mean, I can sideline myself, but it would be me sidelining me. I really don't think, and this is my opinion, there's no real way to stop this from happening as long as I want it to be happening, as long as I want to heal, as long as I want to explore my own inner depths. And my goal is to be a more authentic person. The more that goal is still my, shining star, so to speak, as long as that is the focus, I don't think that I can go backwards. But there's always that fear, right? There's that fear of being back in that headspace of being essentially a victim. And don't get me wrong, you can be victimized, but you do not have to live as a victim. Six of Wands, finishing this out, it talks about success. It talks about visibility. And that's always been hard for me, visibility. I'm not somebody that wants to be in the spotlight. I do think that I have a function as far as possibly being helpful and being a guide to other people that want to be in a different place in their lives where they don't feel like everything is weighing on them. It's not to say that I don't go through that stuff. I most certainly do. I've had a very rough little over a week, you know, and I try to deal with my emotional self, but you can't really rush healing. You can't really rush self-discovery either. Sometimes you just have to be in the uncomfortable, and it's one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn, is that sometimes things aren't going to be resolved as quickly as I would like them to be. Sometimes things have to sit. Sometimes they have to marinate. And the best I can do is to try to be healthily detached from outcomes and expectations. And that's not easy to do. We're almost brought up on hope and expectation. But in reality, expectation, well, that just creates a story that hasn't even happened yet. Whether that be something that you look at as positive or negative outcomes, we don't know what will happen in the next 5 minutes. I don't know what will happen in the next 5 minutes. That was driven home to me when my mom had a heart attack a week from this last Saturday. And no matter the relationship that you have with a parent, and I love my mom, I don't think that there's anything in this world that can prepare you for something that can come right straight out of the blue. Anyway, I'm still dealing with that. My mom is okay. She looks fantastic. And I'm glad for that, but we didn't know she had heart issues. So it's absolutely frightening. And it's no wonder we as humans try to grasp at what's going to make us feel safe. But safety, that's not really a thing either. We are literally spinning on a rock. And maybe, I guess it depends on how you believe, right? But I say all this because taking the time to have emotions and to accept the things that may or may not happen and still live a life without fear. Fear is what stops living. It stops you from having experiences. don't let that be what happens. I fight with it every day. Better to fight it, or maybe even just accept it. See, I go back and forth. It's about integration. It is about integration. Fear plays a role in our lives, but it just shouldn't be a main role. I don't think. Okay, it's probably like 20 minutes long, so I'm gonna go. Have a good day.